Welcome back to the Juliana Method. We have made it to episode 4, so now it's time to unveil my tips and tricks for success. We're going to start this part of the series with interviewing. Before I start, you must know my most professionally embarrassing moments have always been in interviews. One of the questions I asked in my first interview was, when do I start? We need to think about this one for a second. Was this a right thing to say? No. Because of situations like that, I went to a professional for help. I spoke with Kathy Rocha of the Worth Institute at UConn, and she gave me tons of tips and tricks on how to succeed for an interview. Today I'm going to go over what questions you should be expected to answer, what questions you should be asking at the end, and how to stand out from your competitors. Trust me when I say that I know nerves can be high before an interview. In instances like this, you must know how to calm your nerves. There are a few tricks you can apply to get over these nerves. To start, there's the breathing 4-7-8 pattern. You breathe in for 4 seconds, hold it for 7, and breathe out for 8. This helps to stabilize your breathing patterns in times of high stress. Next is to tense up really tight and then untense. And if you still don't feel good, do it again. Tense up and release. And over time, you should finally feel comfortable enough in which you don't have to do this. Next, come up with a phrase. Once you come up with this phrase, write it down in a notebook over and over again until your handwriting is stable. Once your handwriting is stable, your emotions should be stable as well. For example, Kathy's favorite phrase is, "I will be great." Being prepared for an interview is more than just being ready to answer questions. It goes down to what you bring as well. The first thing I'll note is that you should bring a notebook and a pen. If you're taking notes, it looks really good on your part because the interviewer will see how engaged you are. Next, you should always have extra copies of your resume. These days, most resumes are turned in online before the interview actually occurs. Just in case your resume has updated since the time you turned it in, I suggest you bring in another copy. When bringing these things in, you don't want to be fumbling with your bag and your notebook and figuring out where your resume is and how to get your pencil out properly. It should look seamless. I suggest a bag like this. You can open it up and put business cards here, pencils here, and you can easily take your notebook out on the fly. Next, we're going to talk about what questions you should be expected to answer. We all know that this is the biggest part of the interviewing process. There are various questions that an interviewer can ask you, and they can range from very job-specific to broad. In general, popular questions that are asked are, tell me about yourself, what are your strengths and weaknesses, why do you want to work here, where do you see yourself in 5 years, and what are your salary expectations? These questions can all be very difficult to answer. In a question that relates to salary, you can always turn it back on them. What's a salary that you are willing to pay for this position, or what is a range of salaries that can be expected? Tell me about yourself can be tricky. You must not ramble. The answer must be short, clear, and identify why you are the perfect person for this job. It's kind of like your elevator pitch. For example, I would say, I'm currently a rising sophomore at UConn studying biomedical engineering, and my interests are X, Y, and Z. Some job-specific questions can be, can you describe a challenging project you've worked on? What relevant experience do you have in this position? How do you prioritize work with multiple deadlines? And what skills do you bring to this job? There are also behavioral questions that an interviewer can ask you. Tell me a time when you handled a difficult situation. Describe a time where you worked in a team. Tell me a time when you showed leadership. And how do you handle stress and pressure? You must understand that the interviewer has these 3 things in mind. Can you do the job? Can you do the job in this company, for example, work with certain types of people or different amounts of people? And can you do the job with us? This includes the specific department, or sometimes you could be overqualified for a job as well. Everything you answer should be centered around the job description. Your experience and examples that demonstrate your ability to do the job, your level of interest, and your fit. Do you fit in a specific culture? It also all comes down to the questions you ask at the end. These these can be just as important as the questions you answered prior. Let's go over what you should not ask. Do not ask questions that are available. You need to be doing your research on the job and the company beforehand. So do not ask questions such as, who's your competitor? How big are you? And what's your yearly revenue? These are all questions that you could be finding online. Next, never ask about your salary, time off, or benefits. These are all questions that can be answered once you get the job, and you can always decline the job if you got it. You want to make them believe that you want the job more than anything. So you should ask, what's your culture? Is it teamwork or individual? Are you accountable for any mistakes you made, or can you just get away with anything? What are key factors of success, specifically in the job you're applying for, and in the company as well? And lastly, what is the biggest challenge associated with this job? Where will I struggle, and where can I find resources to help? They want to know that you're willing to improve on your skills. Now, how do you separate yourself from the other people getting interviewed? A big deciding factor is experience. Sometimes you can have too much experience where the company just feels like there's no place for you to grow there. You can also have too little experience where they just don't want you at all. You need to have the right amount of experience in which you can fit in, but you can also grow as well. Your experience is a good way to measure your fit for the job, but you also need to show that you're interested. Next, your chemistry is extremely important. You need to kind of click with the interviewer. It's really easy to make a bad first impression, and it's really hard to make a second impression that will overrule your first one. You must go into the interview with a good act. You need to be natural and have a good attitude in order to sell yourself. Once you finish the interview, immediately send an email or a thank you card. This brings your name back to the interviewer, but it also shows how interested you were in the job. You should also include something that you remembered or took from the interview. For example, thank you, ... I enjoyed this, ... look forward to hearing back from you. Or I appreciate that, ... Lastly, I'm going to leave you with 5 tips that Kathy suggests to perfect an interview. Dressing appropriately, maintaining eye contact, being confident but not arrogant, listening to questions and clarifying if you need it, and managing your nerves. The most important advice I can give you is to just prepare. The more prepared you are, the more calm you'll be in the interview and the less nerves that will show through. I hope these tips were helpful. I know they definitely will help me in my next interview, and I can't wait to see you next week. Bye!